I guess I'll sit over here like I'm on a dating show or something. Well, it's super great to be here. I'm Jack. I'm the executive editor of the Architect's newspaper. I'm really excited to be talking to these experts about making Miami. What's going on? What are you working on? What are the challenges? So it's a real honor for the Architect's newspaper to be a media sponsor and a continuing education partner. If you're an architect and you need learning units, it's getting towards the end of the year. We can help you with that about this event. So it's great. So for this panel, we're talking about the creation of high quality, useful civic space in Miami. How do we make it? What are the challenges? What are the urgencies? Who are the players? And from afar, the newspaper has covered the intensity of development that's going on in this city. Oftentimes, it takes the form of opulent towers or expensive developments. And I've been really privileged in preparing for this panel and learning about the city to know about the growth of other types and other avenues of development in the city of Miami. And so we're here to celebrate the cultural, creative, entrepreneurial life through the institutions, landscapes, destinations, and centers that prioritize community. So I'm going to introduce people you know better than I do to talk about what they're working on. We have Tony Cho, who's here. I'll go in order here. Meg Daly from The Underline, Friends of The Underline. Woo! Matt Hagman, who's from Opportunity Miami. We have Brandy Reddick, Executive Director of the Reef Line here. And at the end, Raymond Fort, Vice President of Architectonica. So I want to start by getting an update on hearing about the Underline, because this is a project that Patrice from your organization, Meg, presented last month at Utopian Hour. Where's Patrice?
Hey, Patrice.
Here she is. This was a project that I saw there that we've covered before that I'm really excited and enthusiastic about, the creation of a linear park in 3 phases that begins in downtown Miami. So Meg, I wondered if you could tell us how it's going and where the idea came from and what you're looking forward to next. And I'll get fidgety if you talk too long. We have about 4 minutes or 4 or 5 minutes.
Just cut in.
Just cut in.
Just
okay.
cut in. Say stop.
All right, all right.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you. So I'm representing the Underline, which started about a decade ago. I had a bike accident and broke both of my arms. That was the bad news. The good news is I came up with the idea for the Underline, walking below Metro Rail to get to physical therapy. And I thought, why aren't we turning all of this land below the train above us into something that the community can enjoy? So I had this, I called it the crazy idea, and just started shopping it, and all of a sudden people liked it and sort of created a movement of we want to build a city together where people can walk and bike and connect with each other and get to know each other. And then with that movement, funding followed, right? So we talk about the challenges. Funding is always a challenge. We've had incredible support from Miami-Dade County and the municipalities along the way, Miami, Coral Gables, and South Miami, as well as federal. I think I actually knocked on Matt's door very early on when he was with the Knight Foundation and gave us our first grant. And so for all of you in this space, it's complicated, right? There is no one door that we knock on to make these projects happen. So fast forward today, the Underline extends from downtown to Dadeland, 10 miles long, 120 acres. The first half mile has been open since 2021. It's active with 1.5 million visitors annually. Phase 2 is under construction, sort of going through more residential areas down to North Coconut Grove. For all of you in the Grove, we're coming. So then down from Coconut Grove to Dadeland will be completed by 25-26, making this one of the fastest moving projects of its scope in the country. Why? And I think it's really because people thought that this would change our experience with our community and with the way we live here. And why are we doing this? And we started with the transportation. This is multimodal transportation, which is what great cities are doing, is you have choices on how you can move around. But then, you start to layer in nature, right? So then you have 500,000 native plants and trees. And then I think one of the questions you had, Jack, which what was the biggest surprise?
Yeah, of course.
Well, the biggest surprise to me was the consistency of priorities, because we've been at this for 10 years. And for the community, the first priority was safety, being able to feel like you can be safe, not just in place, but getting there. The second was nature, and the third was everything else, from art. Brandy, you and I met early on, and Ray helped with an initiative with the University of Miami. And so this is not a project of one, this is a project of many. And I see so many familiar faces, all of you have contributed. So that is the why. And then I think I told you the what. So phase 3 will be completed by the end of the year. I think we have some of our pictures up there.
So phase 2 by the end of?
We'll be opening in the end of February.
End of February,
of
wow.
this year. And then phase 3 will be completed by 2026. So here's, just before I go, because I think you're going to cut me off in a second, one of the things I'm really excited about is microforests. We'll be adding a whole string of microforests, which I hope get layered into everything we do in Miami-Dade County. They're basically, think of the size of a basketball court or this beautiful backyard that Tony has opened to us, and you overplant. And plants grow 10 times faster, 20 times more dense, and 30 times more biodiverse. And so think about what that does for resiliency, for Miami-Dade County. So those are all the things that we're working on, and I just want to thank all of you who have helped us in this journey.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited about that second phase opening. And
are you going to say nice things when you read an article in February?
Time will tell. Editors never say. Well, from that, I wanted to hear next from Brandy, working on the Reef Line, another project that centers both environment and art, but in an aquatic way. And so I know you've worked with OMA, with Sho from OMA on this project. He's a very good architect. And so maybe you can tell us a bit about that, the ambition and the promise and what's happening with the Reef Line.
Sure, thank you. First of all, I want to apologize for not being Jimena Caminos. Jimena sends her regards, and I am the executive director of the Reef Line, and will be filling in for her today.
And if you want to, a little bit closer, yeah.
Much like Meg said, the Reef Line started as an idea, a very crazy idea, in around 2019, 2020, when the city of Miami Beach, in partnership with Jimena and an artist named Leandro Ulrich, installed a 22-car pileup on the sands of Miami Beach called Order of Importance. And that artwork, Leandro envisioned it as something that was ephemeral and that would speak about, the noise and congestion traffic jams cause, and when you're on the beach, you experience this quietness. So it was this wonderful juxtaposition with that artwork. So I recall vividly Jimena and I sitting on the beach after the installation was coming down, and she says, what if we put this underwater and make a purpose-built reef? And I was like, okay, it's kind of crazy, but maybe it could happen. So from that point on, the Reef Line has gained momentum, thanks to the Knight Foundation, which gave seed money of $85,000 to start the permitting process. We've been working with the Department of Environmental Resources for about 2 years on getting permits for this, because nobody quite understands what it is. And as that started growing, that momentum started growing, the city of Miami Beach issued an arts and culture geobond. So the arts and culture industry advocated, and by an overwhelming 64% vote, arts and cultural organizations received $159 million to expand the cultural footprint of Miami Beach. And with that, $5 million was given to the Reef Line. So in that time, that's one of our architects on the project, Alberto Latour.
A plant. Sorry. That's not-
And yes, OMA has been working with the Reef Line over a period of about 2 years to work on a master plan. The idea is that the Reef Line begins, we're starting with phase 1A, which will be Leandro Ulrich's cars underwater. We'll expand to Petro Cesti's heart, the heart of Okeanos, which is the actual whale heart, the size of a whale heart. And then artist Carlos Betancourt, in collaboration with Alberto Latour, will be designing a series of starfish that will interweb and connect the entire reef line for its entirety of 7 miles. So this is scheduled to start fabrication in December and deployment in
December,
spring.
like 2 weeks from now? Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. We're
Okay.
ready, yes.
All right, you ready?
We're
Okay.
ready. We're
So
ready.
how will people get to experience the reef line? Like, what will that, is it from photos? Is it snorkeling?
Sure.
Is it diving? Like, what happens?
Sure, obviously the traditional ways, diving, boat tours, but what we're really excited about is developing an augmented reality version of the Reef Line, where anyone in the world can access the Reef Line through this augmented reality technology, where it actually overlays information about the artist, the architect, as well as the corals, and it becomes an educational tool.
That sounds amazing. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Cool. I want to continue for a moment to think about architecture and hear from Ray on the end. Ray, who has his own microphone. But I know, I mean, your firm has done really major work, headquartered in Miami and expanded around the world. But maybe you could tell me a little bit about like a really community-centered or public space-oriented project that is either recently finished or that you've been working on that your team and office is excited about here in Miami. Like, give us an example of something.
Well, I think at a very high level, can you hear me okay with this? Okay.
Yes.
The way that the municipalities are set up in this part of the world is that, especially in Miami and in Miami Beach, is that each project is individually contributing towards civic space. And when we think about civic space, it's really all the spaces in between buildings. And depending on where you are and which neighborhood you're in, there are certain codes that would apply or overlays that would apply that are implementing a larger vision. So we can take, for example, Wynwood has its own overlay called the NRD1, the Neighborhood Revitalization District 1, and Architectonica Geo has done the streetscape master plan for that neighborhood. But the way that it gets implemented is that as projects are built, they're responsible for the frontage of that street, and some of those streets are designated as Woonerfs, which is the Dutch term for a pedestrian-oriented street with limited vehicular use. And in other areas, the streets have different right-of-way widths, so that they're maybe promoting additional public throughways. Since the way the neighborhood is oriented, you might have connections that are more strongly in the east-west or north-south direction. So that's one example where the city is saying we think that there's a larger master plan at play, but it's too much for us to do at once, so we're going to rely on individual developers to contribute towards that. However, there are projects themselves that take on the role of actually building out the civic space. I wasn't actually sure what we were going to talk about here, so when I gave those images, I didn't know what they were going to be relating to. But one of the projects is a tower that is recently topped off on South Beach at the intersection of 5th and Alton. And I spent about 2 years getting entitlements for that project. It was a 7.5 acre site, and the site originally was zoned to only allow for 63 feet of height of development of building. And you could cover the entire site, the whole 7 acres, with one large building, and it just didn't really make sense. So what we proposed was to dedicate a 3-acre park, which we eventually met with the community with, understood what they wanted, and implemented the programming of what the surrounding West Avenue neighborhood needed. West Avenue doesn't really have a park. It has a bay link, a bay walk, but it doesn't connect to south of 5th. So through all these community meetings, we engaged and understood what was needed. And we collected all the development rights and put them onto one corner of the site into a building that is about 550 feet. And so there was quite of a jump in height.
That's like the glassy tower here with like the
the glassy tower, curved facade,
Yeah,
and there's
okay.
a park in the foreground.
This one?
Not that one.
Not that one, a different
Not that
one.
one, different one. You're confusing your glass towers.
Sorry. That's
so-
on me.
This
one.
There we go. So the park is in the foreground in that project, and it was on the developer to actually build the park within 12 months after receiving the approvals. So that, in this case, it's entirely on the private sector to essentially outreach, design, develop, and build the park, dedicate it, and by dedicating the park first, it gave them then the rights to start the actual residential development. So that's where we are today, and that'll be completed in 2024. But
Another project for me to cover in the newspaper.
it's your call.
Okay. Great. Well, architects typically have clients. Clients are typically or often developers. And I wanted to turn next, if we can pass the microphone down to hear from our host, Tony. We're going to have a panel right after this about regenerative placemaking. We're going to dive into that. But I wonder maybe if you could tell us a little bit about this hub where we're sitting and your work in Little Haiti, and a bit about your efforts. I know you've had a lot of initiatives and you've done a lot of work. You know, I think you're saying you've been in the neighborhood for 20 years or so. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the community that's here and the roots that you have in this place.
Sure, thank you. So I'm a native Floridian, so to me, I've been back and forth in Miami my whole life. I've been in this community for 23 years, which actually the first job that I had was with the Nonviolence Project, working in Edison Senior High, which is an F school, one of the worst schools in the nation, a lot of violence, and we were teaching nonviolent education. And I was always drawn to this community early on because of the creative class that was actually living and working out of warehouses. And before we bought this building 20 years ago, there was an artist community actually living in here, throwing events in here, called Muksha Family Collective. And of course, you know, we subsidized them, helped them through parties. We had the Marleys here, we did a lot of stuff together. But it was early on that we were placemaking in this community, and I saw the rich, vibrant culture that is, before it was Little Haiti, because we are in Little Haiti, which was designated about 5 years ago. But before it was Little Haiti, the turn of the century, this was called Lemon City. And so this was a citrus grove, and we have some of the oldest buildings in Miami here. The Dupuy Medical Office Building in Magic City, which I was one of the co-founders of. I have one of my partners, ex-partners here, Bob Zangrillo, and we've been doing work in this neighborhood now for a very long time. And the neighborhood has evolved, and so it's really important, I think, to understand the context of place. And you know, early on, you know, Tony Goldman was one of my mentors, and the first thing he taught me was make the place clean and safe, right? And so that's what we did in Wynwood together, and I've worked a lot with Arquitectonica and Ray and his father over the years to create amazing master plans and places and really promote public, open, and civic spaces. And then you kind of see kind of the result of that. And Wynwood is one of those examples because it was the first time that I had been involved in large-scale collaboration between the city and the community and the stakeholders and the artists and the independent brands. And, you know, we started out really promoting independent brands like Zach the Baker, Plant the Future, that's here, Paloma and Yair, who decorated this whole place that give it that beautiful biophilic design. So let's give them a round of applause. And just as a little anecdote, really, you know, kind of focusing on the butcher, the baker, the barber, the heart and soul of Main Street, and then starting to see really the concerted efforts of all the developers, the investors, to try to create a fantastic place together. And so we worked collaboratively with the community, with the city, to create the NRD, the Neighborhood Revitalization District, which we could have gone 30 stories, but we said, no, we want to max out at 5 to 8 stories. We want to be, have that European context and that feel of place that's really more, it's more human scale and human-centric. Winnerfs and all kinds of new concepts that would make it great. And then when you look at kind of the result of what happened in Wynwood, it wasn't necessarily what we envisioned in terms of the height. What happened was the development happened around the periphery because that's where the most density and height was. And so